My name is Katrieva Jones-Munroe, and I'm currently the Director of Online Learning at the University of Houston in Permian Basin. And we also have with us my co-presenters, Jacob Aiden Martinez, who is the Director of Student Life at San Antonio College, Dr. Aurelia de los Reyes, who is the Dean of Student Success at San Antonio College, and Dr. Vanessa Anderson, who is the Dean of Academic Success at St. Philip's College. And today we're going to talk to you about the process we went through in walking through the Quality Matters Online Learner Support Candidacy Plus certification. Now, a year ago, around this time, we all began on this journey, and we were all hired and employees of Alamo College's district. Alamo College's district is located in San Antonio, Texas. I worked at the district office as an online learning coordinator, and the district itself consists of 5 individually accredited colleges. 2 of those colleges, San Antonio College and St. Philip's College, were the colleges that actually went through the Candidacy Plus certification. So today what we're going to do is share with you our experiences in working towards that certification and some of the things we've learned. We're going to discuss why we decided to pursue the certification, summarize the certification, review the benefits of the certification, develop a plan of action, and we call that a request for participation or an RFP, describe new practices that we developed as a large-scale institution, and we refer to those as certification pathway tools. We'll also identify solutions that we found to close the gap in access and discuss any challenges and lessons learned that we discovered. Why we decided to pursue the certification in the first place. Well, as a district, we looked at all 5 of our colleges' persistence rates, and what we noticed is there was a gap in persistence rates from fall to fall and fall to spring for students who were taking exclusively online courses. We didn't know the reason for the gap, and it was a big question mark. So what we decided to do is pull back the layers of persistence rates and dig into research so that research could give us more information about what factors contribute to low persistence rates. And what the research did was connect persistence rates, student support services, and the lack of access to student support services to low persistence rates, and which is why we looked into what type of gaps in access to technology were presented in our online support services for online students. And Jacob is going to give you a summary of the certification itself. Jacob?
Good afternoon, everybody. So our summary of the online support candidacy certification, the candidacy itself provides a structured and guided way for institutions to prepare for a program review. So some institutions don't go through the candidacy phase. Some of them go straight into the certification application process. We went through the candidacy phase because we knew that there was a lot of things that we were needing to collect that we weren't sure if we had. And so this phase, because it's a framework and it's structured, it was a way for us to go through that as we went down this journey for our online learner support. Through that candidacy, there's 2 criterions that we have to follow. The first was that we had to show direct and indirect support for online learners through remote access to these following 12 units. Those units were orientation to online study, technical support, academic advising, proctoring and student authentication, tutoring, grade appeals, our remote library access, accessibility services, records and registration, financial aid services, billing, and institutional and student policies. And so the interesting thing about these 12 units is that not all these units reside under the student success side of the house, which is where I work. So some of this was part of the academic side of the house, and some of it was even part of our college services. So we really had to communicate and collaborate together to get the information that we needed. The evidence to support the first criteria is we needed to include a list of links to the listed services that we said we had. We had to explain how each service supports the online learner and promotes learner success. And we had to plan to address any of those gaps that we've identified through this journey. Some of the annotations is that we had to have a brief summary from each support service regarding its goals and the services for online learners specifically. So that is something that we had to add, as most of our mission statements or most of our services didn't include anything specifically about online learners. It was just for students in general. The second criterion that we had to show was to have a robust process to collect, distribute, and use our learner feedback to inform and improve learner support efforts. So we had to provide a description of our data collection, distribution, and feedback mechanisms to improve learner support efforts. We had to show representative survey data addressing our learner satisfaction with online campus services over the past 3 years, which proved to be difficult as some units had 3 years worth of data and others did not. And we had to document any changes in policy, organization, or resources that had been influenced by learner feedback. So we had to show if there was anything that changed by the feedback that we received, how we were notating that and where those changes were made. So in our annotations, we did say it should not be assumed that raw data speak for themselves. And that's something that we discovered through this journey, and they'll talk a little bit more about later in this presentation, was that some of the data that we received was just very, it was different types of data. So we're trying to have to really try to analyze it and make it fit within the program criterion rubric. And so that was something that proved very challenging for us. I'm also going to talk to you about our third outcome, which is the benefits of going through the program certification. Student benefits include that the program reviews help ensure that students have access to essential academic resources and support services on an online learning environment. So as we were going through this journey, we did realize that a lot of the services that we have in the student support side were not very well advertised or were not easily found on our website. And then also that these reviews provide further evidence to current students, board members, and accreditors that the Alamo colleges are committed to continuous quality improvement for our online learners. The college also has benefits as well. The review process helped identify our strengths, challenges, and opportunities in servicing online learners. And one of the bigger ones was that the certification also added value to the distance learning area of our 5th year accreditation report. So currently we are going through our 5th year SAC-CLC accreditation. And so a lot of the stuff that is being asked on that report is also some of the similar work that we're doing here. So kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone in the work that we're doing. And next I'm going to invite back Katrieva to talk about our 4th outcome, which is develop and request participation from each college.
Can I just ask one quick question?
Yes.
To you, actually to you. What did you mean by persistent rates? That was your first question.
A student who is persistently, once they start in the fall semester, they're persistently engaged in education at the same institution. That's what I mean by persistence rates. And what we could. Excuse me? Yes, persistence to, the way we were looking at it is if a student starts in fall 2016, then fall 2017, they're still coming back to the institution. That's how we define persistence rates. And we were losing students and we didn't know where they were going. So we didn't have this full story.
Just to help me understand as well, it is not like graduation rate.
No, ma'am, no.
It's just a student coming back, whether
Yes.
they're retaking courses or progressing.
They're persistently involved in education within our institution, anywhere within our institution, because we have 5 individually accredited institutions.
Okay.
So they are persistently coming back from year to year and taking classes at any one of our 5 institutions.
Okay,
It
thank
has
you.
nothing to do with graduation rates. Thank you for clarifying that. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question from you regarding, you said you have survey data addressing learner satisfaction for 3 years. So did you develop a survey and delivered it to student and collected the same data for 3 years to
Yes,
be
we're going to
qualified?
get to that. It's later in the presentation, but we are going to answer your question. If you could hold on to that question about the surveys,
Okay.
because we have more information that we'd like to unfold, and that may add some clarification. So in outcome 4, we're looking at developing a plan of action. This is very important. As the academic or certification coach, my role was to provide an outline, an overview of what this certification was, what it encompasses, and who all needed to be at the table in order for us to reach the certification. And one of the ways this was done was through the request for participation. Now, going through this certification was not my brainchild. It was actually my supervisors, who is Dr. Luke Dowden, the Associate Vice Chancellor of Online Learning. He looked at the persistence rates and he came to me and pretty much said, I know there's a gap, and here's a tool that may help us address the gap, but I would like for you to figure out the connection between the two, and if this is a good process for us to take our institutions through. So that's one of the guiding factors that led to this as well. So in the request for participation, this is a document that we typically use in Alamo Colleges Online, which is a district function where that provides some oversight and district online learning initiatives for each of our 5 colleges. And what we typically do is provide an RFP, request for participation, to our colleges, and we invite, we don't mandate. We welcome our colleges to participate in a particular initiative that we're rolling out. In this particular instance, we were looking at the Candidacy Plus certification. In this RFP, we outlined all of the stakeholders who needed to be at the table, and they were the quality assurance team members, and these were a group of experts from both the academic success side of the house as well as the student success side of the house. And these members would help guide us through the process. We also identified a program liaison and a certification coach. All of my co-presenters were program liaison, and this is a representative from the institution itself, from the specific college. The role of the quality assurance team was to collect and review initial data, make recommendations, explain rationales, and offer suggestions and improvements. The role of the program liaison was to prepare data reports, provide initial data and additional data, answer questions during our QM official program review, challenge and decide and or accept any initial decisions that come from the QM official program review, and make amendments if needed during the official review. The certification coach, that was a role that I held, and that was to provide wraparound support for the institutions as they walked through this certification. And that support included providing clarification on each of the criterions, and the criterions are the requirements, supporting data reports, sending reminders for deadlines, proofing data reports, conducting internal mock reviews at each institution, and providing guidance to the quality assurance team members as needed, as often as needed. One of the documents, an additional component within the RFP, are the documents that's required that tells you what you need in order to meet the certification standards. And these documents are the annotated program criteria and the program candidacy. Now, if your institution is not walking through the candidacy, if they decided not to take the candidacy path, then you would only be looking at annotated programming criteria, which is the first document. If your institution has decided we have some of the evidence required to meet the certification standards, but not all of them, then you want to pursue both the program candidacy plus the annotated program criteria. You would be using both documents. In our case, we were using both documents. I like to look at these documents. The annotated program criteria is more like the syllabus, and the program candidacy chart are just like the assessments. So the candidacy walks you through all of the assessments, all of the evidence you need to collect, and how it needs to align to the criterion in order for you to meet the certification. So that's how I would often explain that. Data reports is also a component that was explained in the RFP. The data reports are required by Quality Matters. They provide you with the data reports, and what you have to do is fill them in. They're blank documents, and you would fill them in. So in these documents, you would identify any gaps that exist in your institution, and you would identify solutions that would fill those gaps. Also, another component is providing the quality assurance team with an outline of how much time they need to invest in this process. Very, very, very important. I can't tell you how important this is. People want to know, how much time do I need to invest in this? Is it going to be 10 hours a week, 20 hours a week? This was a new process for us, so I couldn't give them a breakdown as far as how many hours you need to commit, but what I could do based upon our friends at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte was follow some of their best practices, and that was establishing bi-weekly meetings the first semester that you go through the candidacy, and then the second semester, which is the semester before you submit your application for official review by Quality Matters, we would start meeting weekly, 1 hour a week. Also providing your review team, your quality assurance review team, with formats to host those meetings. We hosted meetings via web conference as well as face-to-face. Now, I will tell you that if you have a small quality assurance team, you could do web-based meetings, and those will work out very well, as the University of North Carolina conducted web-based meetings. But if you have a large quality assurance team, and we had 30+ people on our quality assurance team, we realized real fast that a Zoom meeting was not going to work for us. It wasn't working. So what I had to do was hold face-to-face, and the program liaisons, we held face-to-face meetings. And I can tell you that there is no substitution for your presence. So you just need to carve that time. If you're a certification coach, carve that time in your schedule, because not only does it let the institution that you're serving know, hey, I care about you and your progression through this certification and candidacy, but it also lets them know that I value you and I value your time, and I'm showing you how much I value you because I'm here. I'm here at your campus, on your, on your campus, in your office. I would go to them. I would not ask them to come to me. An internal mock review, that's also a best standard. The whole purpose of this is to simulate the process that Quality Matters will use once they are reviewing your application. Your final application is to simulate that process. I can't tell you how important this is. We assembled internal mock reviewers throughout our institution. So each college had their own set of mock reviewers. We followed the framework from Quality Matters, which means we had 3 mock reviewers on each of the college's team. Many of our mock reviewers are here. Amy Gates was a mock reviewer, Pam Morrison, Rocky Conrad, Nadia Shelby, Rudy Lopez, and Riley Way. They were all mock reviewers. And I can tell you that this internal mock review, it was estimated once we surveyed our mock reviewers, each of them spent, for over the course of 2 weeks, they spent 20 hours each week reviewing our applications. We appreciated it and we valued them. And because they spent this much time, they outlined at least, I want to say at least maybe 25 deficiencies they found in our application, and we were able to address those deficiencies before submitting it to Quality Matters. And so it's very important. Cloud storage. How are you what type of repository are you going to use to store all of the artifacts that you collect, all of that evidence that you collect that's going to align to the criterion? We use, what do we use? OneDrive. Okay, we use OneDrive. We started with Google Drive, but we decided not to use Google Drive because there was no security involved, so we use OneDrive. Some institutions, I've been talking to University of Houston, they've been using SharePoint, so you can use SharePoint if that's something that your institution supports. SharePoint, I believe, is a Microsoft product, so if you are a Microsoft campus or institution, then you have access to SharePoint. You can use that as well. Outcome 4 is the good stuff. These are the best practices that we at Alamo College District developed in addition to this process. So we refer to these as our certification pathway tools. The reason why we develop new best standards is because we were a large institution and our counterparts were smaller institutions. And as you know, if you're working with a quality assurance team that has a maximum number of 8, there are just certain things that work with 8 people that's not conducive to 35 plus people. And so we had to create several tools that would allow us to be efficient and effective through this process. And so there's 10 tools I'll be introducing to you today. These tools include a swim lane diagram. This is a visual representation of each stakeholder, what they provide and what their responsibilities are at each stage of the process so that there's complete transparency. Also, a learner feedback rubric and a remote access to services rubric. These are criterion that are outlined in the requirements for the certification. However, the documents that we've used took each of our QA team members through the process of developing their learner feedback statements or their promise to online learners and how online learners could access their online support services. And these are things we did not have before. Our kickoff orientation, you'll need 2 types of orientations. You'll need a kickoff orientation. You'll also need an orientation for your internal mock review. The purpose of the orientation is to give all of your stakeholders a summary of what they're doing, why they're doing it, when they're going to do it, and how it's going to be done. An assurance team milestone chart. This was very, very important. I didn't think it was going to be as important as it was, but it was to provide the QA team members with deliverables that were tied to each of their outlines. And I gave them check marks. Each time they completed something, there was a check mark towards the things they completed. And I know it sounds rudimentary, but believe me, it actually worked because it was a signifier. It was an alert to say, this is where we started, this is where we are, and this is what we have left to do. Remote access to services and learner feedback evaluation form. This was really a form to help us identify our gaps. In the beginning of this process, it was challenging for all of the 12 units to clearly identify the gaps and stepping them through this form. And this form just included prompting or salient questions that helped them identify some of their gaps. And some of those questions included, how do students access your online orientation for online students? How do they access it? And so each of the QA members had to define and had to give us scenarios of how the students would access this. The mock review or kickoff orientation, I discussed that. The candidacy progress report, which was a quantitative summary of artifacts that were completed. And this was produced at the halfway point of the candidacy pathway. Why the halfway point? Because at some point you need to re-energize your quality team members, because remember, we spent a whole year on that, and some institutions have spent 3 years. So you'll need to re-energize your quality team members. If you're spending 3 years, I would say at the end of each year of that 3 years, you have this report and you draft it so that your team members will know this is what we've done and this is what we've completed. An in-flight status report. This is a pictorial that captures the percentage of completion of each of the 3 phases. We completed all 3 phases in a year. So as we completed those phases, I basically created a chart, thanks to the communication and the graphic design team, where they could see the gears. At the beginning, it said 0 was complete. 0 of phase 1 was complete. And towards the end, you would see 100% of phase 2 is complete. 100% of phase 3 is complete. And now you're at the final 2 steps. So they could actually see how they were completing their work. A unit feedback and survey target dates. This was one of the last tools we developed, and that's because we introduced surveys. And the survey was surveying your student, capturing learner feedback was a part of the process. Not only do you have to capture the learner feedback, but you have to inform Quality Matters how you use that feedback to inform you of changes in your business practices. And this is an example. I've used this because this is one of the traditional documents, one of the first tools that I created, which was a 12-month accelerated timeline grid. And the purpose of this was to show the QA members during the kickoff orientation a 12-month grid of deliverables and criterion. At the top, you'll see each month of their timeline, what the criterion is, and at the bottom are deliverables. So each of the quality team members know exactly what to expect in any given month. And now I'm going to hand the baton over to Dr. De Los Reyes.
Thank you, Katrieva. So I'm going to be sharing with you the approach we took and some of the strategies we used to close these gaps for online learners. The first thing that we quickly realized was that the information we had, it was all over the place. We did not have one single one-stop shop for online learners, and that's what we decided to do. So we call it the hub or the one-stop shop. And if you can see the example in there, so there's academic support services and student support services. As part of the certification, we had to revisit and redo all the mission statements for every of the 12 units. So there's an example there for advising. They had to review the mission statement and include the commitment to servicing online learners. The other step was that we quickly realized is that we were surveying students, but we were not targeting specifically online learners. And one of the things we decided to do, because we had to have 3 years of data and not all of the 12 units had the 3 years of data, we decided to work on one survey that would include questions from the 12 different units. So each unit contributed to 2 or 3 questions for that specific survey. And we did this in an effort, one, to collect all the data at the same time. And second, if you send 13 different surveys to online students, what are the chances that you will really get a good response rate, you know, for those? So we wanted to have just one survey sent to all and use that information to inform the changes that we were gonna be putting together to improve their learning. Well, the great news was that San Antonio College got the certification, and St. Philip's is still in the process, but we learned this October the 7th, and we're very excited about this. So it's been a lot of hard work for a whole year, and we are very happy to report that we are now certified for that. I'm going to talk to you a little bit of the lessons learned at San Antonio College and the challenges that we face. So invest in tacos, it really works. We learned that, like Katrieva said, you know, it's hard work. It's starting to be calling in meetings, and the people is, oh my gosh, another 2 hours meeting or 1 hour meeting, and this is already for a whole year. So just invest on food so that the team can continue being motivated about the project. The other important thing was to provide guidance on assessment and data analysis. We realized that although some of the units were collecting the data, they were just collecting them and probably put them in a report, but they were not sharing with the rest of the team, or they were not using actually the feedback to do some action on improving their processes. So as a group, we decided to select a framework, and we chose PDCA. So the teams now send out the survey, collect the data, gather as teams, discuss some of the feedback, and then put an action plan in place in order to improve the process or whatever they learn and gather from that specific survey. Some of them are also doing not just a survey, but doing triangulating the data with a focus group or some other data from a national report. Building momentum was important, and it is to us. So we decided to continue to meet as a committee for the 12 units, and just in these meetings, we were just gonna share best practices. If they are collecting data in different ways, then this is gonna be a good way for us to share that and probably learn from each other on the process of giving access to online learners. Providing the timely feedback on the information collected is important. One of the things that we got feedback from the group at the beginning was that we were meeting for 2 hours, and it was a long time for them to, 20 people ask questions. So if somebody was sharing their challenges, then everybody else was just there like waiting for their turn to report or ask questions. And we started to do like a 15-minute meeting with each unit. So I would block the whole morning, and I would have them 15-minute each, and then I would give feedback on the data they had submitted, and then just ask them, okay, this is what you need to collect, or what you need to rewrite or improve on this, or address this specific issue or question. And that was really effective. The other important thing to consider is, since the beginning of the journey, just agree on format for the charts and the tables, so that at the end you have 13 units providing data for 3 years in very different formats. So you spend a lot of time trying to format and make it a one document that makes sense, that looks similar, and that is easy to read. So establishing that, those guidelines since the beginning is important. The other critical part is to keep the team informed of the process and the progress. So those documents that Katrieva was able to develop and share with the team really keep us all informed. And then whenever that phase ended and we continue working on the narrative and getting ready to submit the application, we would also keep them informed, sending an email saying this is where we are at, so that everybody will be still engaged. And more so because once we submit the application, we would get requests for extra evidence. So I needed them to be ready, so that usually for those, we would get a week or so to answer them. So everybody was on the watch for that email that said, there's an urgent meeting, so that we can address these extra requests for evidence. One of the things that we also did was to be very open and honest about the gaps that we found and that we needed to work on in the application. And that was one of the feedback we got from the QM reviewers. They really appreciated that we did not try to cover things up. I mean, this is an improvement process. It doesn't have to be perfect. We had to meet 85% of the criteria in order to get certified. So they really give us kudos for that. Say, we really appreciated that you were very honest of the things that you have not been able to achieve, and you also provided the plan on how you're gonna do to close these existing gaps still. And now is Dr. Anderson will share with us some of the challenges we had for both colleges.
Thank you, Dr. Reyes. As she mentioned, many of the same challenges and lessons learned were also experienced by St. Philip's College, in addition to the ones you see before you. The 2-hour QA team meetings, which Katrieva mentioned, were a little overwhelming to many, so we decided to decrease that time to an hour. And as Aurelia mentioned, our one-on-one 15-minute meetings with each area was extremely beneficial as we were preparing the certification packet based on the 12 areas. And as we were working with the 12 areas, we realized in our district, Alamo College's district, that 2 of the areas had district oversight. So from billing and financial aid, which led to an additional time frame needed to work through any changes and/or challenges, requests for information needed. So we had to build in some additional time. So if you're looking at scaling this to your institution, and if your institution is a part of a district or a system, it's important to factor that time in. Also, have the right people seated at the table. There were 12 units, give or take, along with others that we were working with through this process. But as we have submitted the certification packet and continued to process the data and information, we realized that our table may get larger and expand. So be very open to making sure the right contacts are connected to the discussion, and those seated around the table can make quick movement, work collaboratively with their efforts, and with all involved in the process. Also, we were using the course review forms presented by Quality Matters. This is, from what I understand, a fairly new launching process as far as the online certification. And we were very fortunate, and Quality Matters would ask our feedback on the forms and how the forms could be adjusted to reflect this candidacy moving forward. So we were able to offer that feedback to Quality Matters as well. It was previously mentioned, stay motivated and stay energized. This took us a year, and it could have taken us 3 years. And it's important as key figures on the team transitioned in and out, whether it's the dean's level, director's level, coordinator's level, you have to stay focused, energized, and motivated, whether that's tacos, pizza, whatever works. Please provide that encouragement and support, also necessary via communication methods as well. And we often realized that a technical writer was one of those hidden gems in the process. As we were pulling all of the information together, it was important to have one voice, consistent tables, and consistent presentation. And a technical writer is very much necessary to do so. At this time, we have a brief group activity, and as you see before you, if you could work with those at your table to identify strengths and opportunities in your online support areas within your institution and ways your institution may support online learners. And then we'll have 1 or 2 of you, if you would be so gracious as to volunteer to offer us your recommendations, that would be great. So if you could please begin that discussion process. So thank you so much for participating in the group activity. We will ask that you wrap up the discussion. And if we could have one table, if not two, one table, please provide us with your feedback to the questions. That would be greatly appreciated. Who would like to volunteer? Who would like to volunteer? Or I can wave my wand. I know, I know, unfortunately. Thank you so much for volunteering.
One opportunity that we have is we're going through this process. And so we have all the links on our website, but it's just like, here's the link to the bursar, but students don't know why they're going to the bursar. So it's providing that narrative for the students as to, here's the bursar, here's why you would go to them. Maybe you want to go to the registrar, because, you know, these kids are 18, they don't know this vocabulary. So it's providing the narrative on the website.
Great, that's great. Thank you. And at this time, we would like to open up the discussion to address any questions that you may have, or any questions from our online audience as well.
So I guess as a clarification, for your survey, was that dedicated to fully online students, or did it include blended students who are taking face-to-face courses as well?
It was only for online students. To give you background, we have 20,000 students at San Antonio College, and we in any given semester have from 3,000 to 3,500 students, only online students. So it was targeted to the online students only. That's about 17, 18% a semester online students. Anybody else?
You mentioned that you went through a 1-year process, but then you had to provide 3 years of data. So how did you, first, when did you provide that survey to the students? And like, how did you get 3 years of data when you were working on it for 1 year?
As I mentioned, some of the units had been collecting data and had the 3 years.
Okay.
But we had probably 4 units out of the 12 that did not. They were collecting data, but they had no way to find out which students were only online students or in what semester. Because remember, I mean, we have 80% of our students are part-time students. And in one semester, they might be taking only 1 or 2 online classes. And then in the next semester, they might just be coming to 1 face-to-face class or 1 online class. So it was difficult for the departments to really, you know, be able to disaggregate that data by just online students. So that's why we decided to use that one survey, and we did it in the spring. And actually, we put it together in the spring, and we sent it before the end of the spring, and we analyzed the data in the summer. But that was part of being open and say, well, these units were not able, this is the data they had, but it was not exclusively for online students. So being transparent and reporting that, and they were, you know, we were good with that.
So you have 3 years of data, but QM, I don't want to say doesn't care, but they don't care that the data is, or the survey is the same from year 1 to year 2 to year 3.
Of course, we only provided for those units that did not had a way to disaggregate the data, just the one that they did for the online students. And then we provided the plan on how this will be carried on from now to, you know, in the future.
Okay, so you have 1 full year of data and then a year of, or a plan on how you're going to continue.
Correct.
With this survey.
And for
Okay.
the other units that had the 3 years, then there was the explanation, the data description, and the
Okay.
analysis.
Okay.
Yes. Any other questions, comments?
There weren't any online that I saw at the time.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for attending we're gonna be here, so if you have any extra questions, we'll be happy to answer those.